If you love ghost stories, folklore, and all things mysterious, you need to make a trip to Haunted in downtown Tullahoma, Tennessee. Just a short drive from Nashville, this family-owned Gothic shop is filled with the strange, unusual, and downright fascinating. This isn't a big box store full of mass-produced decorations. Haunted specializes in handmade curiosities, Gothic decor, metaphysical supplies, green witchcraft essentials, and unique pieces created by independent artists. Whether you're decorating or just looking for something you won't find anywhere else, Haunted is worth the trip. Visit them on 125 West Lincoln Street in Tullahoma, or shop online at hauntedstore.net. That's right, hauntedstore.net. Haunted, curated for the strange and unusual. There are roads that become famous because armies marched across them. Others because presidents traveled them. But every now and then, there's a lonely stretch of dirt that earns its reputation for an entirely different reason. It's a place where locals don't hurry after sunset. A place where horses don't want to travel. It's a place where men and women instinctively glance over their shoulders. Where an old tragedy refuses to remain buried. I'm Alan Searcy, the American Haunted Historian, and this is Southern Ghost Stories. In the late 19th century, there was such a road in upstate New York. It wound through farmland and scattered woods outside the villages north of Albany, connecting small farms and lonely homes where lantern light was often the only sign of civilization for miles. During the day, it looked perfectly ordinary. Wagons rattled across it. Farmers drove cattle home before dusk. Children gathered berries along the fence rows. But when darkness settled over the countryside and the last windows extinguished their lamps, the road belonged to something else. Those who lived nearby called it Harlem Road, and more than a few respectable people insisted that if you traveled it late enough, you might find yourself sharing the journey with someone who had died there many years before. Stories like that have a way of growing over time. Every generation has a detail or two until no one can remember where the truth ends and where the legend really begins. Yet the people who lived near Harlem Road all agreed on one thing. The ghost was not a harmless, wandering spirit. It was the restless soul of a young woman whose life had ended violently before she ever became an adult. Some claimed they'd seen her gliding beside passing riders. Others spoke of horses suddenly bolting in terror for no apparent reason. A few insisted they had heard sobbing carried on the evening wind. Whether every tale was true hardly mattered. The reputation of the road had become so firmly established that sensible people simply chose another route after sunset. To understand why, you have to go back several years, to a young woman named Allie Wentworth. By every account, Allie was everything her neighbors admired. She was kind, well-spoken, and possessed a sort of quiet beauty that drew attention without ever her seeking it. She lived with her family on a modest farm just off Harlem Road, where the rhythm of life rarely changed. Days were measured by chores, seasons, and church bells. It was a simple existence, but to Allie it held every promise of happiness because she had fallen in love. The young man's name was Howard Keith. Howard was a hard-working young farmer whose future seemed as steady as the fields he plowed. Friends expected the two to eventually marry, build a home somewhere nearby, and spend the rest of their lives together. In rural New York during the 1880s, there was a comfort and predictability. Families remained close. Neighbors watched out for one another. Courtships often lasted years before ending in marriage. And Howard and Allie appeared destined for exactly that future. On warm evenings, Howard would ride horseback to the Wentworth house. Sometimes they would sit on the porch talking while lanterns flickered in the windows. Other nights they would stroll the yard beneath the stars, speaking quietly about the life they hoped to build together. Their families approved of the match. Nothing seemed capable of changing what everyone believed was just inevitable. And then one evening, everything changed. Howard mounted his horse and started towards the Wentworth farm just as he had done hundreds of times before. He expected another peaceful visit, and instead, as he approached the house, something immediately felt wrong. There were no cheerful voices drifting through the windows, no laughter, no welcoming light spilling across the porch. Instead, the yard was filled with frightened neighbors moving hurriedly through the darkness. Lanterns bobbed in every direction. Horses stood saddled and restless. Men shouted to one another while women gathered near the porch, some already crying. Howard barely had time to dismount before someone rushed toward him. Allie was missing. She'd gone out riding earlier that evening and had never returned. At first, no one panicked. A horse could throw a shoe. A rider might stop to visit some neighbors. But as daylight disappeared and darkness spread across the countryside, concern turned into fear. Search parties were organized almost immediately. Fathers carrying rifles disappeared into the woods. Young men took lanterns and spread across the fields. Others followed every lane branching from Harlem Road, calling Allie's name into the darkness. Howard joined the search without hesitation. Hour after hour, they combed the countryside. Lanterns illuminated creek banks, wooded hollows, abandoned fences, and lonely crossroads. Every passing minute made the silence heavier. No one wanted to say what they were beginning to fear. And then, sometime deep into the night, they heard hoofbeats. Out of the darkness came Allie's horse. The animal was lathered with sweat, trembling violently and running as though something unspeakable had chased it for miles. But there was no rider, no Allie. The empty saddle told them everything they needed to know. Without waiting for instructions, the search party seized their lanterns and followed the terrified horse as it wheeled around and started back down Harlem Road. The animal seemed determined to lead them somewhere. No one spoke. The only sounds were pounding hooves, hurried footsteps, and the rattle of lantern glass as they raced through the darkness. After a mile or two, the horse finally stopped. There, lying beside the lonely road, illuminated only by a flickering lantern light, was Allie. She was still alive. Barely. Blood soaked the front of her dress. A gunshot had torn through her chest. Her breathing came in shallow, desperate gasps as Howard fell to his knees beside her, calling her name again and again. He begged her to tell him who had done this. He pleaded for her to hold on just a little bit longer. For one heartbreaking moment, it seemed as though she might answer. Her lips moved. A faint breath escaped. But no words came. Within moments, Allie Wentworth died in the arms of the man she had planned to marry. Her killer had vanished into the darkness, and with him, any hope of justice. No one was ever brought to justice for the murder of Allie Wentworth. Investigators questioned neighbors, searched the surrounding countryside, and followed every lead they could uncover. But the trail seemed to disappear with the night itself. Whether her killer was a stranger passing through, someone she recognized, or someone who had watched her movements for days, no one could say. The little farming community struggled to make sense of a crime that seemed so completely out of place. Violent murders were rare in rural upstate New York during the 1880s. Doors were often left unlocked. Neighbors trusted one another. Yet somewhere along Harlem Road, a young woman had been gunned down. And whoever pulled the trigger, they just simply vanished. Before long, the official investigation faded. But among the people who lived there, the story never did. Howard Keith was never the same. Friends later said the cheerful young farmer seemed to age almost overnight. The future he'd imagined had disappeared on that lonely roadside, and no amount of time seemed capable of healing the wound. He continued working his farm because there was little else to do. But those who knew him noticed he rarely smiled anymore. He avoided conversations about marriage, and whenever Allie's name was brought up, he quickly and quietly excused himself. Some claimed he rode Harlem Road alone from time to time, stopping where she had died and sitting silently in the saddle as if waiting for someone who would never come home again. Whether those stories were true or simply another layer added to the legend, no one really knows. But everyone agreed that Howard carried the weight of that night for the rest of his life. And as the years passed, something even stranger began to happen. Travelers returning after dark started telling stories that sounded remarkably alike. At first, the accounts were dismissed as imagination. After all, anyone riding a lonely country road at night could mistake shadows for something far more sinister. Moonlight filtering through branches can create strange shapes, and fear has a way of convincing the mind that ordinary things are extraordinary. Yet these witnesses described details that were disturbingly consistent. They spoke of an overwhelming feeling they just weren't alone. Horses would become uneasy for no apparent reason, snorting, stamping, and refusing to continue down Harlem Road. Some animals suddenly veered toward the ditch, while others broke into a panic gallop, ignoring every attempt by the riders to calm them. Even experienced horsemen admitted they had never seen their animals react with such terror. Whatever frightened them seemed completely invisible to human eyes, at least at first. Then came the sightings. Witnesses described seeing the faint outline of a young woman moving silently beside the road. She appeared almost solid one moment and nearly transparent the next, drifting through the darkness without making a sound. She never called out. She never reached towards anyone. She simply appeared beside travelers for a few terrifying moments before disappearing as suddenly as she had come. Several people claimed she seemed dressed in pale clothing that caught with little moonlight filtered through the trees. Others noticed her long, dark hair blowing in a wind they themselves could not feel. But it was her face, or rather the absence of it, that haunted those who saw her. They said the figure bore the terrible wounds that had ended her life. Where her face should have been was a horrifying reminder of the violence she had suffered. Witnesses often struggled to describe exactly what they had seen. Some refused to speak of it altogether. Others became visibly shaken years later when recalling the encounter. Whatever appeared along Harlem Road was no peaceful spirit passing quietly into eternity. It seemed forever frozen in that final moments of unimaginable terror. One autumn evening in 1888, a traveling businessman named Harry Ludwig arrived at a country inn after spending the day calling on customers throughout the region. Like many visitors, he eventually heard the local stories surrounding Harlem Road. The conversation amused him. Harry considered himself a practical man, and while everyone else spoke in hushed tones about hauntings and restless spirits, he dismissed the tales as a little more than country superstition. Ghost stories, he believed, belonged beside the fireplace, not in the real world. When someone warned him not to ride down Harlem Road after sunset, Harry smiled politely and climbed into his saddle anyway. At first, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. The evening was calm, the moon hung low above the trees, and the only sounds came from his horse's steady hoofbeats against the dirt road. But after several miles, the silence became unnerving. The countryside seemed unnaturally still. There were no insects singing in the grass, no distant barking dogs. Even the breeze seemed to disappear. Harry later admitted it felt as though the entire world had stopped breathing. And then his horse froze. No amount of encouragement would make the animal move another step. Its ears flattened. Its muscles trembled beneath the saddle. Harry tried speaking calmly and then nudged the horse forward with his heels. Instead of obeying, the animal snorted violently and began backing away as though something stood directly in its path in front of them. Finally, with considerable effort, Harry persuaded the frightened horse to continue. That was when he noticed movement just ahead. Standing beside the road was an unmistakable figure of a young woman. At first he assumed someone needed help, but as he drew closer, the figure remained perfectly motionless. She neither waved nor called out. Instead, she slowly turns towards him. In the pale moonlight, Harry realized he was looking at something no living person could possibly survive. Her clothing fluttered gently in the night air. Long strands of dark hair drifted across her shoulders, stained with blood. The terrible wound that had claimed her life remained horribly visible, as though time itself had refused to heal it. Harry could do nothing except stare. The apparition seemed to glide silently beside him for several moments. There was no sound of footsteps, no rustling leaves, only the pounding of his heart and the frantic breathing of his horse. And then, without warning, the figure simply dissolved into the darkness. One instant she was there, the next she was gone. Harry never laughed at ghost stories again. He returned to the inn, pale, shaken, and he was convinced something beyond explanation haunted Harlem Road. Whether what he had witnessed was truly the restless spirit of Allie Wentworth or merely a vision born from fear is something each person must decide for themselves. But even today, stories linger about lonely roads where tragedies left a permanent mark on the landscape. Places where grief is said to echo long after the last witness is gone. And perhaps, on certain quiet nights in upstate New York, when the moon hangs low and the road falls silent, a young woman still walks Harlem Road, searching for the justice she never received. I'm Alan Searcy, the American Haunted Historian. Have you got my latest book yet? Pistols at Red River. It's a whole lot of fun. It's a true story of Andrew Jackson in a duel he was involved in. It was a wild time to be alive. I mean, he later went on to become president, but he was married to a woman who was married to a guy in Kentucky. It was a crazy story. He got tired of the bigamy whispers and called a guy out. They went to the state line, and they hashed it out like men with pistols, as one should when someone defames your wife. Anyway, Pistols at Red River, it's available on Amazon, and you can read it on Kindle. In fact, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read the book for free. It's hard to beat free. In fact, all my books are on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, Amazon. Fear and Folklore, American Monsters, Southern Ghost Stories, Downtown Nashville, Ghost Stories and Graveyard Tales, Cincinnati. All my books, go to Amazon, type in Alan Searcy or Southern Ghost Stories, they'll all pop up. Anyway, we're trying to reach 150 Apple Podcast reviews and 100 Spotify reviews for Halloween. If you've enjoyed the show, please take 45, 60 seconds to leave a review. It helps more than people realize, and it helps other listeners discover Southern Ghost Stories. Apple uses ratings and reviews to decide which shows to recommend and bump in the algorithm. A quick review helps other people who love folklore and haunted history find the podcast. And have you been to Monster City Madhouse yet? MonsterCityMadhouse.com. The new shirt's a whole lot of fun. Gravestone. Features a mashup of Tombstone and the Universal Monsters. This Monster City Madhouse exclusive shirt is made from a comfortable 60/40 polyester cotton blend, with quotes like, "I'm your Huckleberry," and "Hell's coming with me." You'll be ready to unleash monster justice. And use promo code SAVE10 to get 10% off your order. That's right, go to MonsterCityMadhouse.com, promo code SAVE10, get you 10% off. And be sure to like Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook and Instagram. Send your questions to southernghoststories@gmail.com for a future Q&A episode. And also, don't forget, I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee, July 31st through August 2nd for CreepyCon. CreepyCon is one of the largest horror conventions in Tennessee. I'll be there signing books in the Southern Ghost Stories booth. You'll see horror icons like Kane Hodder and Bill Moseley. It's going to be a really good time. My buddy Ben from Monster City Madhouse, he'll be there. You'll find all those cool shirts in his booth. So come on out, man. Knoxville, July 31st through August 2nd. It's going to be a really good time. So thank you for listening to Southern Ghost Stories. I'm Alan Searcy, the American Haunted Historian, and I'll see you guys again really, really soon. If you love ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and everything that goes bump in the night, then mark your calendars for the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo, happening September 26th in Mayfield, Kentucky at the Mayfield Graves County Fairgrounds. This incredible one-day event brings together some of the biggest names in the paranormal community, including Aaron G. Thompson from Netflix's 28 Days Haunted, Jimmy and Jeffrey from Outlaw Paranormal, The Wyndham Bros, Josh Morris, Michael Huntington, Rachel Ravensville, and many, many more special guests and speakers. Your admission is just $15, and that gets you an all-day come-and-go wristband so you can explore at your own pace. Browse more than 35 vendors, enjoy delicious food trucks, attend speaker presentations and panels, meet investigators, hear incredible stories, and dive into the worlds of hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and the unexplained. Whether you're a seasoned ghost hunter or just curious about the mysteries that surround us, there's something for everyone at the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit West Kentucky Paranormal Expo on Facebook and get ready for one of the most exciting paranormal events of the year. We'll see you in Mayfield on September 26th. Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing is available.